Assalamu alaikum. Good morning and good evening to everyone who's here and joined us today. We're very excited for this fireside chat with William Bao Bean. He is the managing director for Orbit Startups. But if I was to take a little bit of romantic license in introducing him, I think, if you were to get AI or Chat GPT to invent the perfect investor for a remote frontier market like Pakistan, I think they would get pretty close to what William is. His background, his experience, he's not just intelligent and business savvy, but he's not afraid of going places where others are afraid to go. He is one of the most prolific sort of venture investors in Pakistan. His investments are the who's who of the Pakistani startup ecosystem. So we're very excited to have him here. Previously he was also a partner at SoftBank China and India Holdings. And in a prior life, he was also voted the #1 stock picker for media telecom by Thomson Reuters. So he's a very interesting character, and we're going to talk to him about Pakistan's startup ecosystem and his worldview as well today. My name is Bilal Lakhani. I am a journalist as well as a communications professional. I am definitely not the person you come for to get stock picking advice. So that's what we have William here for. He is a much more savvy investor, and apparently, as I just found out, a much more savvy traveler, and has quite skills in terms of being able to do a remote kitchen as he travels as well. But maybe that's a story for a different podcast or a fireside chat. But William, we're so excited you're here. Thank you for making time for us in your busy schedule.
No, thanks so much. Really appreciate the time and opportunity.
Absolutely. So I want to get right into it. You're running, one of the first and longest running startup programs in Asia. You also recently announced over the last couple of weeks, 5 new investments in Pakistan as well. Let's begin by asking, what makes you so bullish in Pakistan, and why is Pakistan a market that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I think there's a huge mega trend that a lot of people are missing, which is that you'll see by 2030 thereabouts, the emerging and frontier markets will be bigger than the developed markets, because the developed markets are growing like this, and the emerging frontier markets are growing like this, right? And so it's just sort of math. Now, if you look around the world, there's 3 things that we generally look for, which is the ability to get on the internet, so relatively inexpensive data access, a smartphone that most people can afford, that actually works, right? And then the ability to pay for things, even if it's cash on delivery. And we saw when I started investing in China, the total market cap of all the internet companies combined was about $2.5–3 billion. This is a 04, 05. And by the time I quit investing in China, 2018, early 19, it hit 3.5 trillion. So we're looking at a lot of the same things that you see in China, in Pakistan, in terms of this opportunity to see a leapfrog or a tech-driven transformation of the economy. Now, there's some challenges with that transformation, right? So you've got, 700+ million people in China came out of poverty. Not just the 20 years I've been investing there, but even before that. And a lot of that was government-led, but a lot of that was also tech-driven, right? So we are seeing what I believe is a similar type opportunity, where the people themselves, from the micro SME, mom and pop shop, when you Kirana stores, whatever, the people in the neighborhoods, they can leverage tech to transform the economy, transform their lives, transform business, transform education, health, a lot of these basic building blocks. That's where we're investing. So it's not like I've seen this whole movie before. China's obviously a little bit different. I've been investing since 05 in internet in India. But when it came to like 2017, when we started doing research on the market, and 2019, when we actually did our first investment, we're seeing this bear out. and we're seeing great local entrepreneurs, most
Mhm.
of whom were educated at home, at least for undergrad.
Mhm.
And that came about just by happenstance, but that's who we ended up backing. And we're actually seeing like this tech-driven transformation that you cannot really stop, right? So you've got a flood, you've got some politics, you've got a couple of devaluations, maybe two or three. You've
Mhm.
got, COVID wasn't like a happy time either,
Mhm.
and inflation. And our companies, for the most part, there's some bumps in the road here and there, but they're seeing that growth,
Mhm.
even in U.S. dollar terms.
Mhm.
And so we're particularly excited. Now we might lose some across the way, but out of the 21 investments, 16 up until this year that we've done, all the companies are still running.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so that's we'll probably lose one or two along the way, maybe more. But we're still after 3 years in, very,
Yeah.
very excited about the market, which is why we're continuing to deploy capital. Our check size is not that big, but we did like 5 deals so far this year.
That's very exciting and very refreshing to hear. And also, we knew you were bullish on Pakistan, but to compare your China journey with sort of Pakistan's journey, that's just sort of is very electrifying and energizing, even though there are many differences between those markets as well, as you pointed out. So I want to move into understanding Orbit startups a little bit better. If you could talk to us a little bit about the history of Orbit startups and also what the startup program looks like, and what sort of your investment criteria is like.
Yeah, sure. So we started off as a traditional kind of 3-month accelerator program, coming out of the US model, right? So you invest, you get some stock for the program, and then there's a service fee that we use to cover expenses. So we invest now it's 180K, it's 130K cash, 50K services that we keep.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically we invest and then we take some common stock for our program.
Mm-hmm.
And it started off as a 3-month program, then I made it a 6-month program, and about 5 years ago, I made the program last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And our focus is on positive unit economics, which is
Mm-hmm.
very popular today, but was not
Yeah.
very popular in 2020 and 2021. So if you go to DigiKhata or Dastgyr, and then they're very focused, not so much on like trying to get massive growth, but
Mm-hmm.
on trying to have a profitable or the
Mm-hmm.
ability to go break even whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try and drill that into the operators that we partner with.
Mm-hmm.
We try very hard not to tell the startups what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but through our lifetime program, we work with them, helping them design and implement and run and then interpret the results of experiments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like iterative. And so our organization, we've also iterated
Mm-hmm.
as well. So we look at ourselves as a startup,
Mm-hmm.
and our customer are startups.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest problem that our customers have is
Mm-hmm.
money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's two types of money. There's revenue,
Mm-hmm.
which is non-dilutive, and there's an investment, which is dilutive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we invest and we cause dilution. We take some stock, but our
Mm-hmm.
goal is to try and build up revenue first,
Mm-hmm.
get that traction first,
Mm-hmm.
such that the dilution that you take when you go out to raise money
Mm-hmm.
is reduced.
Yeah.
So we're looking for companies that have gone out there and done something.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a little revenue, sometimes maybe not. So there's a couple of companies that we did invest in both recently and in the past where they didn't really have revenue at the time that we invested.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like Eat Mubarak, which we helped become Blink.
Mm-hmm.
They were B2C food delivery, and we helped
Mm-hmm.
them make that transition to B2B to C. But
Mm-hmm.
when we invested, they didn't really have any revenue because they kind of shut down Eat Mubarak,
Mm-hmm.
the 2C delivery,
Yeah.
before the B2B kind of turned on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then Trickle, Trickle guys just recently launched,
Mm-hmm.
and we had confidence in the founders, so they didn't have revenue, but most of the companies have a little bit of revenue, and our
Mm-hmm.
goal and our role is to help them scale up in their home market.
Mm-hmm.
So we're investing in what we say Pakistan for Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
We're not necessarily investing in a lot of companies to take them overseas, although that's starting to change.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Pakistan for Pakistan, but also the ability to go cross border
Mm-hmm.
where it makes sense. So a lot of like we have 15 investments in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
Only 14 of them are one of them is from Saudi Arabia, but
Mm-hmm.
it's run by Pakistanis.
Oh,
And
wow.
then of the other 14, like
Mm-hmm.
about half of them are from Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Pakistan for Pakistan, but then a lot of these solutions can be sold into like the regional market.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been one of the things that we've tried to you could say that we're innovating, but mostly we're chasing our companies who decided to sell to the Middle East, and then our role through our lifetime program is to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So the criteria is something that people are using, solves a
Mm-hmm.
problem. The
Mm-hmm.
second criteria is can we help? Because we're charging common stock for our program. So, value for money, the stock's worth money.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing is, does it fit into our ecosystem approach, which
Mm-hmm.
is, Pakistan for Pakistan, but also is there an opportunity to go potentially regionally?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is phenomenal, and it's so fantastic to hear how deeply sort of embedded you are within the Pakistani startup culture, and also even within Saudi to see that you've got Pakistani founders or Pakistani team members sort of that are making things happen around the region. I want to pick up this thread and ask you a little bit about advice for founders, particularly in a very tough fundraising environment. So this feels like a very different world than we were a year and a half ago. What advice would you have for Pakistani founders as they navigate this sort of market in which we're operating in right now?
Yeah, so the only thing that you can, number one guarantee is going to happen is there's going to be another cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been investing in tech for like 27 years. I was joking with some guy, like I actually taught Michael Dell how to use his BlackBerry. There's a lot of people who don't even know what a BlackBerry is, but I was a young
Uh-huh.
associate in equity
Mm-hmm.
research in New York, and we went to a Dell Analyst Day, and it was the first day he had his BlackBerry, and he's like, "Yeah, this is great, but my thumb is killing me." And I'm like, yeah, that's why you hit the space bar with the thumb and it auto scrolls down one screen at a time. And this is the old original, like brownie, brownie bar
I remember those.
version. Yeah, yeah. So I've been around a while, and the
Mm-hmm.
idea is that the easiest time to raise money is when you don't need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So focus on positive unit economics. Nobody's paying you for growth.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really need to grow. What you need to
Mm-hmm.
do is not die. Just like
Mm-hmm.
don't die. That's the
Mm-hmm.
number one rule. Don't die.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then, try and you basically need to get to positive unit economics where you spend a dollar
Mm-hmm.
and you make more than a dollar back. Now you
Mm-hmm.
might be negative on your rent
Mm-hmm.
or your salaries or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We had some companies that kind of hit that. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have positive unit economics, usually you can get some angels to come in,
Mm-hmm.
and the dollar goes a lot further than it used to in Pakistan these days.
True.
So 20K checks like a 60K check before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the second thing is go where the money is, right? So like one of the reasons why we're so heavy in GCC Middle East right now is on the one side they have a lot of demand for software, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of startups. They
Mm-hmm.
have a demand, and the other thing is they have money, and not
Mm-hmm.
just like investor money, actually revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that helped keep like Blink alive during their transition from B2C to B2B to C is during COVID, they got a bunch of clients in the Middle East, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we even introduced one in Taiwan
Mm-hmm.
because delivery software suddenly became very
Yeah.
important, and supermarkets in the region, didn't have a delivery function. And so what happened is, you get that revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then the cool thing is when you have revenue in the Middle East, then you can get funding from the local VCs
Mm-hmm.
because they got all this money from the government, right? And they need to spend it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got revenue in the region and you put down little roots, but revenue is important, then you can actually raise from the local VCs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're feeding our portfolio companies into like Sharuk or
Mm-hmm.
MCAN or Sukna or
Mm-hmm.
hopefully MEVP soon. And so That's so go where the money is. The
Mhm,
other place where the money is, like pack launch is very, very important.
mhm,
They are really good about tapping into the Pakistan diaspora in
mhm,
terms of investment and opening up those like pocketbooks.
mhm,
Right? You have a lot of the global tech leaders that
mhm,
were co-founded or founding team or early team members. And there's this great thing that's happening where people are, maybe they're not moving back, but a lot are
mhm,
moving back, but they're
mhm,
actually investing back.
mhm.
And so don't forget to tap those those I guess you call it the diaspora, right?
Mhm,
And then the final thing is that a lot of the local VCs,
mhm,
some are raising money, so they take a little break, but others have raised money.
mhm,
And we love partnering with the local VC. We're not local, right? So
mhm,
we do what we do,
mhm.
but we could not do what we do without the local VCs who are actually on the ground and know the market much better than we do.
Yeah.
So you could say we're ingrained in the market, but
Mhm,
actually we do that by partnering
mhm,
with the people who are actually on the ground. Because
mhm.
unfortunately, right now we don't have people on the ground in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is fascinating and very, very insightful in terms of how you view things. I want to pick a thread from your conversation for my next question, but I also there are lots of audience questions pouring in, so I just want to let the audience know. I'm just gonna, ask a few more questions for another maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll open up to your questions. Please continue sending your questions through the chat to Ali Fahad, and then he will share them with me, and then we'll sort of continue to ask William these questions. One interesting thing you said is, the only thing we know for sure is that there's going to be another cycle. So, talk to me about how you see 2024 and 2025. Like, when do you see, even for yourself, because you need to raise money to fund all these, founders as well. How do you see 2024 and how do you see 2025, and when do you see the cycle beginning to shift?
So I'm spending most of my time actually fundraising for our fund right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can say it's not very easy.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is that for Orbit startups, for 2015, we're top 5% performing VC in the world. For
Mm-hmm.
2019, we're somewhere between 5 and 10. And we're seeing some good progress there.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing is that our model doesn't actually require that much capital
Mm-hmm.
because of the program.
Mm-hmm.
We hopefully can drive to help the companies get to where they want to go, which is that positive unit economics, and then
Mm-hmm.
we can open up the door to other people's capital.
Mm-hmm.
So for every dollar that we have invested, we are driving $8 in follow-on funding from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps on going up a bit. The ratio is
Yep.
pretty good. So I would say for us, the key thing is don't stop investing.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a downturn, it's actually the time that you should continue to invest.
Mm-hmm.
So buy low, sell high,
Mm-hmm.
as a stock picker, that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the valuations are a bit down. We're
Mm-hmm.
pretty early stage, so it doesn't affect that too much. I mean, our valuations that we pay are basically pretty much always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the market, we think will. So the news is going to be really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's going to be a lot of companies going to say out of business, out of business, out of business, out of business. Okay. But then the what's actually happening underneath is that the VCs are deploying capital again. They've already decided which companies are going to support and which companies are not going to support. And the
Mm-hmm.
companies that decide that they're not going to support, those just basically start dying as they run out of money. And
Mm-hmm.
then the companies that they decide to support,
Mm-hmm.
those companies, they're giving more money and
Yep.
helping them weather through,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we're around the world, we're seeing this process flow through. So 2024, it's especially in the beginning and
Mm-hmm.
in the Q4, the number of bankruptcies are still going to go up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But actually underlying, if you've got positive unit economics, if you're building a real business, there's capital there to be had. And
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the last place where there's money is like in the sort of the ESG impact segment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So sorry, I forgot to put that in there. So go where
Yeah.
the money is. It's
Mm-hmm.
diaspora, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
and it's impact, because the
Wow.
impact funds are able to raise. So if you've got like an impact angle, don't greenwash, please.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got like an impact angle, you saw our recent announcement around the Buskuro.
Mm-hmm.
That's really about having impact, and people are funding it, and they're
That's
almost break even.
fascinating.
Yeah. So
Talk
that's
to
the third thing. Yeah.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit more about that. Where do you think the appetite for impact investment is coming from, and why is it more, why is there more there versus some of the other spaces? Our audience might not know as much about that.
Well, it has to do with the LPs, the people who give the VCs the money,
Mm-hmm.
are very much interested in having an impact. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very popular these days.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of focus on climate. There's a big focus on gender,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of the funders that
Mm-hmm.
traditionally deploy into VC funds for emerging frontier, where their pocketbook is still open is
Mm-hmm.
around impact or ESG or climate or gender.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all big issues. These are all huge trends.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where the LPs are giving the money to the GPs, and then
Mm-hmm.
the GPs have to deploy it. The VCs we're called GPs, general partners. We have to
Mm-hmm.
deploy it according to the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have always been focused on climate. We've always had backed a lot of female-led startups
Mm-hmm.
that also serve women. But so that's a good thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is that the VC funds that have been closing, if you look at
Mm-hmm.
the number of climate funds that have gotten funded,
Mm-hmm.
over the last year,
Mm-hmm.
it's like 3, 4, 5x
Mm-hmm.
what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta go
Yeah.
where the money is.
That's fascinating. So I want to zoom out a little bit now and compare Pakistan to other markets. So you're in Dubai. I think these days you're heading to Riyadh, then you're going to Hong Kong, then you're going back to Riyadh. How would you compare like Pakistan's startup ecosystem to other markets that you operate in, whether it's Saudi or Vietnam or others? Like, how would you view Pakistan's startup ecosystem compared to some of the more other regional markets that you operate in?
So we got really lucky in Pakistan. Sometimes we call it like the initial 8 or 9 companies that we invested in, the friends of Sire. Sire is the CEO of
Bank
Blink.
guy. Yeah, he's an
Yeah,
amazing
yeah.
guy.
So
He's actually my
so we
junior.
invested in him, and then he introduced us to like 6 other founders, 6 other companies, and we invested in
Wow.
all of them. So I mean, they
Wow.
weren't like all like good friends of his or anything, but
Hmm.
so the initial portfolio was actually it was referral, and
Hmm.
mostly just referral from Sire. So we
Hmm.
always make sure to thank him.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'd say the bouncing around
Hmm.
is mostly around how do we position ourselves to help our startups, right?
Hmm.
Again, the two things: revenue
Hmm.
and fundraising. And then I'm also spending a huge amount of time fundraising ourselves.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit tiring. Got
Hmm.
a heavy case of jet lag right now.
Hmm.
Actually, when I landed, I slept for almost 12 hours straight. And then I got up for 5 hours, and then I went back to sleep for another 6. So
Yeah.
pretty tough there. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. And if not, happy to you can
No,
redirect.
definitely. And you deserve some sleep. You mentioned sire, and just to sort of pan out a little bit, how do you become a sire? How do you become somebody who earns your trust? And who you're like, hey, okay, if this guy is saying, take a look at this, I'm going to take a look at this.
Yeah, so I think we try not to hide.
Hmm.
So I try to get to Pakistan at least twice a year. I just spent
Hmm.
a week bouncing between Karachi and Lahore back to Karachi.
Hmm.
And I went to the plus 92 and
Hmm.
just stood in the hallway,
Hmm.
So we try not to hide too much.
Hmm.
But the other way is we have 21 companies that we've invested in.
Hmm.
So just get a referral through one of the founders.
Hmm.
We are trying to build out more mentors on the ground
Hmm.
because volunteers who
Hmm.
give up their time to mentor the startups. Actually, most of the mentoring that happens within Pakistan is from our mentors outside of Pakistan and the founders themselves, and also founders doing similar things in different markets. So like Dastgyr and some of the other ones are like chatting with companies, have a lot of the similar model, but in sub-Saharan Africa or in even India or in South Asia, trying to share. So usually a referral or an intro is the best way. You can try and hit me up on like Twitter or something, and happy to refer through to our team. But really, the best way is just we have plenty of founders on the ground in the country,
Yep.
and trying get them to refer. A warm intro is always better than a cold one.
Yeah.
Because in the end, pretty much, well, not pretty much, every single company we invested in Pakistan was a referral.
Wow, that's extraordinary to hear. And it just shows, even in the most sort of, frontier technology sort of startups, the power of human relationships and trust and what that does.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did, um, we did 14 investments in Pakistan without ever meeting the founders in person during
Wow,
COVID.
that's
So the
incredible.
only one we ever met was Sire. So we didn't meet the DigiKhata guys. We didn't, we didn't meet the team from Dastgyr. We didn't meet the Priceway folks. We didn't meet any of them. It was all during COVID on Zoom.
That's incredible. Well, God bless Sire. I'm gonna have to reach out
Yeah.
to him after this.
Yeah, well, he's
Uh,
in Riyadh. He's got demo day at 500 Sanibel coming
okay.
up on Tuesday. So wish him luck. 500's positioned a little bit later stage
Yeah.
now in the region. And we're happy to refer any of our companies to other programs. It's all about like working together to build the ecosystem, and
Yeah.
that's key. So we're happy to refer him to like 500 or anybody else. Especially there's Techstars in Toronto. They're also pretty strong. Yeah, we like them.
Yeah. This is fascinating, and I think it also goes to the kind of culture that Orbit Startups has in terms of being able to do something like that. So my next question is, Pakistani founders have traditionally looked to Western investors or Gulf investors for a lot of investment. But how do Pakistani investors build relationships with and build sort of business cases with or talk their stories with East Asian investors? Because that's something that they traditionally might not have tapped into as much.
So I don't know.
Mhm,
So the short answer,
mhm.
so we have never fundraised in China.
Ah,
We have zero Chinese LPs,
mhm,
even though I
mhm,
was there for 20 years.
mhm,
We have actually gotten a bunch of our Chinese VC friends that have dollars
mhm, mhm,
to invest in South Asian companies,
mhm,
including I think one or two maybe in Pakistan. It's
mhm,
but oftentimes, even though there's neighbors and everybody's friendly, China
mhm,
and Pakistan get along,
mhm,
the capital flow is just not
mhm. Yeah.
there so far.
Mhm,
So we've been working actually pretty consistently to try and get
mhm,
capital from, say, China, which is where there's a lot of money and
mhm,
there's a lot of US dollars floating around that needs to find a
mhm,
home because they can't invest in the US anymore,
mhm.
right? And there's a politics, right? So
Yeah.
there's this real huge untapped pot of gold, right?
Mhm,
But we have not actually yet been that successful
mhm,
in terms of either from the LP to VC side.
mhm,
We can't take Chinese money, but maybe the local VCs can. We haven't seen that much
mhm.
interest, but we have tried very hard to get the VCs, and they usually just go to Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And so it's been something that we wanted to do, but
Mhm.
we failed at.
Okay. Very interesting. And then maybe the last question from my side, and then we'll sort of tap into the audience questions is AI an area of interest from an investment point of view? And also an optional question, like what did you learn from the OpenAI drama? If you would like to indulge, would love to hear your thoughts as well. But just curious for your thoughts on AI and how you view that as from an investment standpoint.
Yeah. So I mean, AI is an enabling technology. So
Mm-hmm.
if you, I got this article somewhere from TechCrunch back
Mm-hmm.
in 2017 saying that we're the number three most active VC in AI at the time, and we had like three investments. And it was because AI at the time was like very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So we just like people would just describe themselves AI driven, blah 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 blah. Yeah, but were they doing LLMs? Not so much. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, so it was algorithms, and there was some deep learning,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the companies were actually, because in China,
Mm-hmm.
if you weren't leveraging AI, you weren't competitive, period. And this is
Mm-hmm.
going back 5-6 years to 2017. So every single one of our companies was leveraging AI. Now, were they like growing it in-house? Were they doing core development or
Mm-hmm.
fundamental cornerstone development? For the most part, no.
Mm-hmm.
So as a startup, like all of our startups leverage AI
Mm-hmm.
to now, and
Mm-hmm.
even more so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the number that are like doing more core technology,
Mm-hmm.
we've gotten pretty lucky with it. So one of our companies out of South Asia does Gen AI for video.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing is they're a Gen AI company that's profitable.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a
yeah, imagine
unicorn.
that, like profitable. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So almost a unicorn, almost a unicorn. So they did we invested, we were first VC. They chased us for a year and a half
Mm.
because they had this technology, but they couldn't find an application for it.
Mm-hmm.
And like long story short, it's kind of a funny story, but so there was 200 million odd Indians using TikTok in India, 57 minutes on average a day.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because we invested in a data company, and that's actually, it
Yeah.
was people just glued to it.
Mm-hmm.
This is before India kicked out TikTok.
Yeah.
And so TikTok was spending $1 million a month on an Indian outsourcing firm with like 4,000 odd people
Mm-hmm.
manually curating the content on TikTok to make sure that there was no like violence or
Mm-hmm.
inappropriate stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that Indian outsourcing firm took the $1 million a month, gave 30K a month to one of our portfolio companies, and pocketed the other 970. And the technology, they finally found an application. It was automatically moderating TikTok,
Wow.
and like good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that's when we finally invested. And
Mm-hmm.
between the time we finally said yes to when we actually signed the documents, they went from 30K a month to 90K a month. Never looked back. Yeah, so they're automatic. Like if you like cricket,
Mm-hmm.
so all the IPL, the Indian Premier League cricket, I don't know about
Yeah.
Pakistan, but the Indian Premier League cricket, every single highlight, every single clip is automatically edited in real time without the content ever leaving the servers of IPL, and delivered to the world. And I think IPL is number 2 in the world after the NFL, but they
Mm-hmm.
also signed the NFL too. So
Mm-hmm.
they're automatically doing all the post-production work, leveraging AI without the content ever leaving the servers. So yeah, it's a money printing machine at this point, and because no more post-production, and it's in real time. Yeah. So
That's
people,
incredible.
the difference, sports, if you
Mm-hmm.
have to wait like an hour or 2 hours or even a day, the
Mm-hmm.
highlights less valuable.
Yeah.
But if you're getting like your favorite player clips in real time as they're happening, just
Mm-hmm.
the amount of viewership goes through the roof. So all
Mm-hmm.
these sports league, from Bundesliga to Champions League, anyway, it's a pitch for a
Yeah.
company. But so technology is awesome. But the
Mm-hmm.
bottom line here is, like, why did we wait a year and a half?
Mm-hmm.
Is because they didn't have an application for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they had an application, we invested, and then we helped them sell all over Europe, now all over the US. And we brought them, out of South Asia. Now they're a global player, and they're basically based in LA.
Wow, that's one of the coolest stories I've ever heard, and it's incredible. And it's also a personal thing because whenever Pakistan's playing a cricket match and I miss it, the first thing I do is like try to search for highlights, and I'm always late enough to not
Yeah,
see the game live, but early enough to not have the highlights up, and so it's like this part in the middle where I've got to watch like really weird, awkward highlights with some weird guy in
yeah,
the Philippines or Pakistan like doing some weird commentary with his kids in the background. So it's just nice to have like high quality production. But
yeah.
that's
Sometimes
amazing.
it clips halfway through, but nobody really notices. I mean, real time over like slight bobbling of the cutting. But yeah, cool.
Uh, that's incredible. So I'm gonna take in some audience questions. There's a question here which says, are you investing in biotech-based green tech? So you mentioned impact investing, but just curious if you are investing in biotech-based green tech. I'm not even completely sure
Yeah,
what that.
yeah. So the short answer is it depends. Now,
Mhm,
so we're Orbit. We are part of the SOSV fund consortium.
mhm,
Okay, and so Orbit is internet and software.
mhm,
But within our fund consortium, we have something called Indie Bio,
mhm,
INDI Bio. Yeah, INDIE Bio,
mhm,
Indie Bio. And they, within our group, are the most active investors in biotech in the world.
mhm,
And our consortium, SOSV Consortium as a group, is the
mhm,
most active investor in climate tech in the world since 2017, according to PitchBook, which is like a tracker,
mhm,
like magnet.
mhm,
So the answer is we don't invest,
mhm,
but our consortium does invest. And Indie Bio, we have actual human tissue wet labs in New York and San Francisco, where we invest, and then the program is getting the use of our labs.
mhm,
So if you go to a PhD, a bunch of PhDs, and you ask them like, how many years is it going to take you to get a lab? And
mhm,
they're like, well, blah, 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 4, 5, 6 years, right? Because they're a postdoc, they're in a
mhm,
university somewhere. And it's
mhm.
like, how would you like to have your own lab in 6 months?
Wow.
And if they jump at it, okay,
Mhm,
fine. They might have what it takes to become a bio entrepreneur. And
mhm.
if they don't jump at it, they probably should remain in academia.
Yeah.
So for Indie Bio, they create a structure and a framework
Mhm,
to enable academic PhDs to take their science and turn it into a startup, but in a framework where they don't freak out.
mhm.
Because
Wow,
startup
that.
is like chaos, right? And
Mhm.
then a lot of people don't thrive, especially if they're coming from a traditional academic environment, in chaos.
Yep.
So we have what we do to help our companies. Indie Bio has we have PhDs on the team. They're helping with we have our own science,
Mhm,
and scientists are the mentors.
mhm.
Yeah. So that's so check out Indie Bio. That's not me, and I
Mhm.
can't really help. Just if you want to apply, just go apply on indiebio.co, I think.
That's fascinating. The next question, and I think you touched upon this briefly, but how many of your portfolios are female-led startups? How important is diversity for a fund? So if you could talk about diversity and how that plays into your thinking as well.
Yeah, so I think we try and back the best founders that we can find. And it just so happens that I think around on average, 40% of the companies that we back are female led,
Mhm,
like co-founder.
mhm,
Um, Pakistan, I'm somewhat sad to say, is a little bit lower than that.
mhm,
Although the five this year, Buskaro, female CEO, and MedIQ, a female CEO. But
mhm,
we don't have a lens so much as we
mhm.
want to back the best founders possible. And a
Yeah.
lot of times those founders are female. So the
Mhm,
last time TechCrunch published a actual ranking, because they
mhm,
do this tracking, but they actually, we were number 5 in the world,
mhm,
and in terms of number, because we invest in a lot of companies, right? So number 5, and there's like 500 and YC in there and whatnot, but we were number 5. And we were, in terms of the percentage, highest at 40% of the top 5, because we're not as investing in as many companies as, like, say, a 500 or a Techstars if you add them all up. So again, we're really focused on backing the best startups,
mhm.
and those startups are very often like female led, and so that's the goal there. Yeah.
Awesome. One more question when it comes to founders or founding team. The question is, what is an ideal founding team? Solo versus two or three founders, tech versus business, etc. So curious for your thoughts on what makes an ideal founding team.
So I've done something around like 330 investments myself. And so if it's a single founder, we don't say no, but one of our team members has to write a 10-page report justifying it. Uh, Okay, because there's like
That's
three
about
things.
Mm-hmm.
There's tech, there's product, and then there's like sales.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO is like an appendix, like a useless organ. The only thing
Mm-hmm.
the CEO does is fundraising, right?
Mm-hmm.
An early stage startup. So
Mm-hmm.
whoever is doing the fundraising, they get to be the CEO, but there's really three functions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult for one person to be good at all three.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you go like Elon Musk or whatever, but that's a very unique human being.
Yeah.
For me, I was a really crappy CEO. I did not do a very good job. So my second startup, I was not the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
What I did was focus on sales
Mm-hmm.
and bringing in the clients, BD partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
strategy. You have to know what you're good at, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have to prove somebody. You have to basically convince somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
different than you are,
Mm-hmm.
I like a technical person, or if you're a technical person, a business person, that they should work with you.
Mm-hmm.
So the first sales job a founder does is trying to get a co-founder.
Mm-hmm.
So we are heavily weighted towards companies with co-founders, 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
4 usually doesn't work out too well. 4 usually ends up being 2,
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of the numbers. So that's the first part of the question. I forgot the second part. Yeah.
And then the other was tech versus business, like tech.
You got to have both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you are a business person and you cannot convince an engineer
Mm-hmm.
to join you and give up their salary and their life and their family and all semblance of stability and
Mm-hmm.
join you, how are you going to expect to get customers to give you money or investors to give you money? So we were very heavily focused on trying to have at least like a tech person, and
Mm-hmm.
then and somebody else who can either do sales and fake product, or do product and fake sales, or sometimes it's 3. Usually co-founders are generally the best, but that doesn't say we do not back single founders. So Maha from Buskaro, I mean, she's been around the block. She's
Mm-hmm.
been GM of Swivel and some other stuff before that.
Mm-hmm.
So she's basically, she's got a founding team,
Mm-hmm.
but as a founder, she's a single founder, and that's okay with us. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
my colleague had to write a report on her.
You said something really surprising in your answer. You said, I wasn't a good CEO. And so I went in my second place, I went into sales. Talk to me a little bit about that. And also like what made you good at sales? Like what do you think was unique in terms of your skill set? Because that's also a skill set that founders need to develop, but just curious to double click into that a little bit.
So it might not sound like it, but I do listen
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And we teach sales, right? So
Mm-hmm.
fundraising is like sales, and
Mm-hmm.
my job when I worked on the Alibaba IPO,
Mm-hmm.
our role was to help Jack Ma and his team not just like sell Alibaba, just explain what Alibaba was.
Mm-hmm.
But he not only had to explain what Alibaba was, which is a B2B marketplace. It was the first IPO when I was working on 05, 06.
Mm-hmm.
But also they had to explain what China was, because nobody knew in the US. It was a US IPO. The tech investors are all in the US, what
Mm-hmm.
China was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that's very, very important is to understand the audience
Mm-hmm.
and to listen. And then on the other side, then you need to be able to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a talking problem. I used
Mm-hmm.
to have sometimes a listening problem, but I learned over time that I would waste a lot less time selling if I shut up every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I am much better at that than product,
Mm-hmm.
and I have like I tend to not be very focused. Like, so having 220 portfolio companies, of which I keep an eye on 100 plus,
Mm-hmm.
is actually more suited to who I am than
Mm-hmm.
just grinding away day in, day out on on something I'm super passionate about. But I'm just not very good at it. So
Mm-hmm.
try and think about yourself outside looking in, or get mentors,
Mm-hmm.
or get people who are not your investors and not your employees and not your spouse
Mm-hmm.
and not your investors, but like mentors are great, or peers. That's why we do programs,
Mm-hmm.
and get people to give you feedback on what they think about you. and that can be very, very helpful. And that's why we do things in groups, because you can't talk to your investors so much. You can't always talk to your employees. You can't talk to your spouse half the time. They're like angry because you're doing the startup in the first place, right? And your friends don't know what the hell you're doing. They think you're crazy.
That's fascinating. You're a very self-aware sort of person. That's interesting because self-awareness is something that all founders and sort of people in the startup ecosystem need, and you're able to identify your own
Well, I
opportunities.
failed a lot. Yeah. Like our mentors, there's a rule. You had to fuck up many things, but succeed at least one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the F word, and by that I mean failure, is something that
Yeah.
we're not comfortable talking about as a Pakistani startup ecosystem. And I think the more comfortable we get with it, the more we will succeed, because failure is part of sort of succeeding. One more question from the audience. What would you tell investors concerned with Pakistani rupee devaluation and not being able to pull funds from outside of Pakistan? How do you manage these risks? So just sort of, the secular risk of devaluation, which is always looming in Pakistan. How do you think about that? Or how do you help founders think about that as they worry about how they're going to return their money back to their investors and all of that?
Yeah. So we don't have a problem with that, because we our companies, they are generally reporting on a periodic basis in US dollar terms. And they might not be growing that quickly, but they have like positive unit economics. And so you go like blink up, 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 and then like 18% down devaluation. Okay, so they take a hit for a month and then they keep on going, right? And so just numerically, I mean, there's some other things like Price was selling smartphones and there weren't like you couldn't actually get smartphones in Pakistan for a month, but that's like a blip. But fundamentally, if investors invest in lines, not dots, right? So
Yeah.
it's like a dot, a dot, a dot, a dot, and a dot, a dot, a dot, a dot, a dot. And then, but over the trend is up and to the right, and it's a tech-driven transformation. You cannot, I mean, when you're digitizing, when you're DigiKhata, or when you're 24/7 Apni Dukan or Dastgyr, or even OKCare for auto parts, and when you're putting 10, 20, 30% more money in the pockets of your retail partners every month, you can't stop that. Like so you can always like push it down a little bit, but what we saw in China is you cannot stop technology. Even the Chinese government used to put the thumb on the scale and push Alibaba and Tencent down, because if they didn't, all the state-owned banks would go out of business.
Yeah.
Right? Because they were just getting outcompeted. Now, the coolest thing is that because of that competition, a lot of those state-owned banks ended up, being able to catch up and catch up and catch up, such that, Citibank in the US is just launching some features that I had 5 years ago in China. Right.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's what happens when you have that competition, when you have that innovation like flowing. And the great thing about Pakistan and Pakistani founders is that they're okay with experimenting. They're okay with like taking a bit of risk. They're okay with going cross-border. Like Vietnamese don't go out cross-border very well, whereas Pakistanis have been going cross-border for many, many years. I mean, a bunch of them came from India, right? That's cross-border, but
Yeah.
they're in Middle East. They're all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that we are really bullish on the market, because of those founders who are willing to take that risk and willing to be data driven. And the market itself, it's just it's almost impossible to stop. So all we do is we just look at the numbers and show them the numbers, and that usually makes the doubts go away. Yeah, most people don't know this, but in 2003, 2004, the leading Chinese internet companies were already public on the Nasdaq, Sina, Sohu, NetEase, and they almost all got delisted as penny stocks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they went public during the boom, and then they were trading at like below $1. and you get delisted, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
their revenue and their profit just started to go dunk, 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 dunk. And a guy I was sitting next to in the office at Bear Stearns in New York in equity research, he started buying them all in his PA, in his
Mm-hmm.
personal account. And he made a shit ton of money because it's like, wow, look at the numbers go.
Mm-hmm.
So numbers beat media, numbers beat like sentiment, like real profit, gross profit, net revenue really drives value. So don't worry so much about it. Just focus on building a business that solves a problem for people and try and get to that positive unit economics.
That's fascinating. And it's so true. And as a communications professional and journalist, I'm kind of, screaming and being like, why is he saying this? But it's true. It's
Yeah, go
the power
Columbia.
of fundamentals over, the flash. And it's
Yeah,
good to see that you can see through that as well. A few more questions from the audience that I want to sneak in before we let you go. How does the Orbit Startups Accelerator differentiate from Techstars, YC, Plug and Play, etc.? So if you could talk about how, what differentiates your startup program versus some of the others.
sure. So we're a little bit later stage
Mhm,
in that our companies usually have a product and they generally
mhm,
might have like a little bit of revenue, or they might be like 10, 20, 30K. Actually, usually it's 10 to 100K monthly gross profit, and the average is about 50.
mhm,
But some of the companies are like way later, and some are
mhm,
actually pre-revenue, so we don't care that much. But we
mhm,
tend to be a little bit later stage.
mhm,
The second thing is we're focused only on emerging frontier markets, ex-China.
mhm,
So we specialize in tech-driven transformation, like
mhm,
emerging market solutions for emerging market challenges, not
mhm,
American solutions for emerging market challenges
mhm,
or Canadian or European, but what's worked before in other markets, and can that learning be applied,
mhm,
not exactly copy paste, but learn and then localize.
mhm,
The third thing is we take common stock, not all
mhm,
preferred.
mhm,
We do pre-money safes,
mhm,
which means the more you raise, the higher your valuation goes, as opposed to post-money safes, like a
mhm,
YC safe. The more you raise, the lower your valuation goes.
mhm,
And there's dilution. So we have anti-dilution on people who invested before us,
mhm,
but people after us, we take dilution.
mhm, mhm,
So the bottom line is founder does well, we do well. Founder
mhm,
does not do well, we don't do well.
mhm,
Because we have common stock, they have common stock, founder stock, and we're all in the same boat.
mhm,
Whereas, say like others, they take dilution, anti-dilution on everybody who invests before them, also anybody who invests after them.
mhm,
So if you do us apples to apples versus like a YC, we're taking about half the equity that they do.
mhm,
If you do a scenario analysis on them. But I think the key thing is that we're in the emerging frontier markets, and a
mhm,
lot of the other players are not. Now, so Techstars, we love Techstars.
mhm,
We actually were modeled on them.
mhm,
So originally, but we
mhm,
kept on iterating.
mhm,
So our program lasts forever.
mhm,
It's not just at 3 months.
mhm,
So we think that for cross-border scale up and cross-border, you
mhm,
don't do that in 3 months. You don't go into market after market after market in a short period of time.
mhm,
So we kept on iterating the model. And so we have our own enterprise sales team, global.
mhm,
And then we also have an ecosystem for customer acquisition, user acquisition on the consumer side. So there's like this like plus plus. So we have enterprise sales, and we have user acquisition, customer acquisition through our ecosystem. That's a little bit especially on the consumer side, we give free advertising to
mhm,
some of the companies that we work with, and
mhm.
that globally is unique.
Wow.
Yeah,
Uh,
it doesn't help all of our companies, but
mhm,
I'll give you an example for Pakistan.
mhm,
So a lot of our companies do not make that much money doing supply chain for the micro SMEs,
mhm,
right? So you have the producer and you have the mom and pop shop, and yes, we fix the supply chain or try,
mhm,
but we're not actually making a lot of money selling that product.
mhm,
But what we're doing now, that there's a decent enough footprint, is once the mom and pop shop, we fix their physical supply chain, so
mhm,
they trust us.
mhm,
Then that mom and pop shop, we're introducing digital services.
Mm.
like a Japanese or Taiwanese 7-Eleven.
Mm.
Okay. So the mom and pop shop can start selling digital services
Mm-hmm.
to their consumers
Mm-hmm.
for profit share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So most people, if you look at our portfolio in Pakistan, they're like, why do you invest in transportation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we want to distribute that transportation through the mom and pop shops in the neighborhoods.
Mm.
Why are you investing in Smart Choice for insurance? Well, we
Wow.
want the mom and pop shop to be a distribution hub for that insurance product.
Mm-hmm.
Why you have near peer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the mom and pop shop knows who in the local neighborhood is getting ready to apply for school or
Mm-hmm.
grad school or some sort of like a position.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at the mom and pop shop as a channel, Alibaba style,
Mm-hmm.
for not just physical goods, but also digital goods.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we are in fintech, e-commerce, health, travel, education,
Mm-hmm.
because we're looking at Dastgyr, DigiKhata, OKker, and 24/7 Amni Dukan to be a physical supply, like a channel
Mm-hmm.
to all that digital product.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully then our actual investment strategy of investing in one of everything makes a little bit more sense. So think about it another way. Alibaba comes in, and Alibaba and Tencent usually come into a market, right? And then they try and blow the thing up. They spend a lot of money. They blow, like they do payment and e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So why is, over the long term, how can Priceoy, because they're beating, was it Daraz? Yeah, they're beating Alibaba in
Mm-hmm.
the market. So
Mm-hmm.
how is that even possible?
Mm-hmm.
Well, our goal over the long term is it's not just Alibaba competing against one company.
Mm-hmm.
It's our ecosystem of 21 companies working together
Mm-hmm.
to compete against that competition. Okay, so think about it like, does Pakistan want to be another India? So
Mm-hmm.
India got colonized not just once but twice,
Mm-hmm.
because half the Indian companies are controlled by Americans, and the other half of the Indian companies are controlled by Chinese. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough look.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do our jobs as
Mm-hmm.
investors, we will enable the Pakistan local entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
to control their future. Now, if they want to sell out to the Chinese or the Americans, they can. It's up to
Mm-hmm.
them. It's their company, not ours. But we want to give them that choice where
Mm-hmm.
they have profitability,
Mm-hmm.
they have positive unit economics, and as a ecosystem of companies working together,
Mm-hmm.
they have the opportunity to be able to make a decision whether or not they want to sell out or whether they want to keep on going.
Wow. I have never heard an investor in Pakistan position sort of, it like this and sort of, paint this picture of how, your individual investments are actually, singing together like a symphony and giving Pakistan the ability and the choice to build an indigenous sort of ecosystem, startup ecosystem that can solve big problems indigenously and then decide what to do with it. That's fascinating, and sort of the vision. Even though I knew your startup investments were the who's who of Pakistan startup ecosystem, I couldn't connect the dots. But I guess that's why you said investors
We don't
invest.
talk about it a little too much because it confuses people.
Yeah.
Um, but like think of like that's why I save it to the end. Everybody already left. No, I think the goal here though is, you know you don't want Pakistan to be another China or another America or
Mm-hmm.
another where
Yeah.
you have to raise $100 million
Mm-hmm.
and give up all your stock in your company
Yeah.
to get money to pay for Facebook and Google ads.
Yeah.
And during the devaluation, it was like Facebook ads, they're priced in dollars and they didn't lower the price,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like what the hell, right? So instead, can we have an ecosystem that's locally driven where everybody's on a double opt-in basis helping
Mm-hmm.
each other if they want to for profit share, because everybody's like it's like a lifetime affiliate program basically is the goal. So far what you've seen is the companies for the most part operating individually,
Mm-hmm.
but what you're going to see over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years is a lot of our companies start to leverage off of each other.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. I think we should make you our
Yeah,
board.
I just copied it from China. It's like Xiaomi, or it's like WeChat, but no Tencent. That's the idea. Decentralized super app.
Wow. That's a bit of, almost Elon Muskish thinking with Twitter as well. Like there's a lot there. Well, I almost wish we could make you Pakistan's Board of Investment chair, because you would do better than most of us at selling Pakistan's case to the world, or being able to, help us understand ourselves better as well. This was fascinating. Thank you so much for being here. There's still like dozens of questions, but I want to let you get to bed and rest as well, so that we can have you again soon. But thank you so much for spending time with us, and thank you to Pak Launch for putting this platform together where we could have such a riveting conversation and feel energized and electrified by
Yeah.
what the
So,
possibilities are.
Bilal, I got one question for you.
Yeah.
How the hell does Ollie do it? Does he's got like a day job, doesn't he? Like, well,
I
can you answer that question?
I think that is the original startup. Like Pak Launch is the original sort of. I don't know how. I think he thrives in chaos. The other thing is, every time he calls you, he makes you feel like you're the only person in the world he's talking to. And there's so much like enthusiasm and energy and time. It's almost like time stops when you talk to him. But then when you look at how much he's doing, I don't know. I think all our founders need to get some mentorship from how the hell he manages his time and energy, for that matter.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
thanks so much, Bilal. Really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. All right, we're just going to stop the recording. Ali, are you going to do that for us? Let me just stop.